Welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I've got my 2020 Gladiator up on the lift. About 2 months ago, started getting some real horrible noise coming underneath it, and didn't change when I put it in and out of four-wheel drive. Nothing seemed to change it. Now on mine, I have an FAD, the FAD deleted, and have solid one-piece axle shafts. So I have a one-piece axle shaft on the passenger side, so my drive shaft spins full time, just like the old JKs. And it's been like that. It's got about 47,000 miles on it. It's been like that since, I want to say approximately 10,000 miles. So, and one day I happened, when I was starting to hear the noise underneath it, I happened to knock the drain plug out of the floor mat and then drove the Jeep, so that with that hole open underneath, it sounded like there was a bucket of bolts tumbling right underneath my feet. So turned out to be the factory drive shaft was shot, as you can see there. I think you can see it there. Let's see if this will focus on it. Let's see if I can move this. Oh, there we go. You can see that boot is just destroyed. And basically the CV joint was shot. This is at the transfer case end, and it was slinging grease everywhere. The axle end was still fine. That U-joint there was fine. But at that point, basically between the lift that I have and the full-time spinning of the drive shaft, it was shot. So, quick phone call to Adam's Offroad, and we have ourselves a brand new. This is a 1350 front drive shaft instead of the factory 1310 U-joint, so it's heavier, and that's what we are going to go ahead and install today. I have to put the yoke on the transfer case, replace the factory yoke. So here we have our always get your Adams t-shirt, and of course over here we got our stickers, and this is going to be our yoke for the transfer case. There we go. So this we're going to have to go ahead and put in, and that looks like our bolts. The yoke's very easy to put in. Actually, at this moment, I'm in just changing the transfer case fluid in this, so my transfer case is drained, but you shouldn't have a problem either way. So we're gonna have to come up underneath here, get right up onto our yoke here. We got to take this center nut off, pull the yoke out, put the new one in, lock tight on the nut, drive it in, and then we'll have to torque it to about 160 foot-pounds. It's a little tight up there, but it is definitely doable. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with that. I'll go ahead and get the socket fit on there. We'll get that old one pulled out, and then go ahead and get the new one in, and then get the drive shaft bolted in. I had pulled this drive shaft. Unfortunately, I don't have that on video. Like I said, a couple months ago, just because I wanted to be able to drive the vehicle, and I've been driving it without a front drive shaft. Like I said, for probably about a month and a half, 2 months now. All right, so let's go ahead and get that yoke out. All right, that came right out. This was the way I had to set up my impact gun to be able to reach through there. It is a 32 millimeter nut that is on that yoke. And then the yoke wouldn't slide right out. And rather than try and get up there with a puller, what I did was just came from the backside with a punch and a hammer, tapped it a couple times, spun it, tapped it a couple times, spun it, and as you can see here, popped right out. So, all right, our next step is to set up the new one to go in, and we'll go ahead and get that put in, and then we'll have to get that torqued down. Okay, in this application on our factory yoke, as you can see here, you got your splines, and then there's a space in here where you would then put this O-ring, and then that O-ring would get sandwiched in there by that nut, and that would help seal off those splines. In this case, there is none of that with this. What we're going to do is put some lubricant on the seal surface of the yoke, and then we're going to put some black silicone in the inside on the splines to help seal the splines up, and then we'll slide it on, and then put the nut back on with some red Loctite, and then torque it down to 160 foot-pounds. Okay, got our sealing surface all prepped, and we have some, see if I get some better light on that. You can see I got some black silicone into the splines. So now we're going to push this into place. All right, so the yoke is in place now. And now what we're going to do is get the nut that locks it in, put some Loctite on the threads of it, thread it on, and then we'll drive that home and then get that torque to 160 foot-pounds. Okay, so the nut is Loctited into place. I have it basically torqued with the impact gun as hard as I can get it, but what now I got to do is go up into the cab, lock the transfer case into 4-wheel high with it in park. That'll lock up the yoke and then allow me to get underneath here and get a torque wrench on it and really torque it. Okay, with the transfer case locked in 4-wheel low, basically using the same setup I used with the impact gun, I was able to put my torque wrench on there and have that torqued to 160 foot-pounds. So that is in place and ready to go. Ready to bolt the drive shaft in. Now, with this particular setup, my drive shaft that I got from Adams has a flange on the yoke here that will allow me to bolt right up to the factory flange. Some people will opt to replace this with a yoke that will accept straps or U-bolts to put the U-joint in. In my case, I opted to just go with the factory flange, which then uses just the factory 4 bolts, just to make it easier. Okay, so when I put these in, I'll set it up into place, set the upper end on the cross member on the exhaust Y pipe here, and then I'll start my bolts down below, because then this obviously will hold up this end of the drive shaft, and the front axle will spin easily. Then I can come right back here, and if your skid plate was in here, it would definitely be tougher, but with the skid plate out, you can then very easily push the drive shaft CV end right up into the yoke, and then now I can start the 2 bottom holes. Then I'll actually have to put it back into transfer case back in neutral, so I can spin that yoke, get the other 2, and then be able to get them all torqued. The added thing, the bolts for this, you're going to want to put a little bit of red Loctite on them. You don't want that vibrating loose. And there we have it. It is bolted in. These bolts up here get torqued to 18 foot-pounds, which is 200 and change inch-pounds, because I had to use a 1/4-inch drive torque wrench that I have, which only does inch-pounds. And then obviously these get torqued down here to spec on the flange. As you can see, with my suspension at full droop, now there's plenty of clearance at the cross member here, which with the factory drive shaft there is not. Factory drive shaft would actually be hitting on that cross member right now. All right, so that is complete. Drive shaft is installed, and that is how you install a front drive shaft in a Jeep Gladiator. This is Adams Offroad, which I've used in my JK. I've used only thing I did not use Adams for was for my CJ project. I went with Tom Woods. Can't go wrong with either one. I do prefer Adams though. Adams, great company to work with, and absolutely bulletproof drive shafts. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this helps anyone doing this. If you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to leave them below. Please like and subscribe if you like what we're doing. Thank you very much and have a great day.